His growl had faded into silence. So complete, even the rats stopped skittering. In the dim back corner of Kennel 42, behind the metal bars scratched with years of despair, lay a German shepherd with eyes too old for his age. No one knew his real name. The shelter staff called him Shadow, not because he followed anyone, but because he never stepped into the light. 3 weeks since his rescue, and he hadn't moved from that spot. Not once. Food went untouched, water bowls stayed full, and every time someone passed his kennel, he'd shrink further into the shadowed corner, ears pinned, heart hammering so loud it echoed. Hopeless, they whispered in the hallway. Too broken. He won't make it. No one dared to touch him. No one had even seen him stand. But that week, something strange happened. A volunteer named Elise, a soft-spoken woman with eyes full of storms and a heart stitched together by loss, signed up for cleanup duty. First-timers never started in the back kennels. But Elise requested Kennel 42 by name. The staff exchanged glances. "Are you sure?" She only nodded. That morning, the air was unusually still. Elise approached the barred door slowly, her rubber shoes barely whispering against the floor. The smell of disinfectant burned her throat, but she kept her eyes fixed on the dark corner. There he was, bones sharp against his coat, ribs rising and falling like waves trying to drown themselves. She knelt, didn't speak, didn't reach, just waited. 1 minute, 2, 5. He didn't growl, didn't flinch. Then his eyes lifted just barely. It wasn't much, but Elise saw it. A flicker, the kind of flicker that ignites wildfires. Behind those eyes, something shifted. A memory, a scent, a spark. And then, barely audible, a sound escaped his throat. Not a growl, not a bark, a whimper, low, fragile, alive. No one knew it yet, but something had changed. Something irreversible. And the most unexpected part? That was only the beginning. Rain tapped gently against the shelter's windows, a rhythmic whisper that seemed too soft for a place carrying so much sorrow. The fluorescent lights above flickered with a tired hum, casting uneven shadows across the concrete floor. Outside, dusk folded itself into the hills, a mist curling at the edges of the pine trees like ghosts reluctant to leave. Inside, the scent of wet fur, bleach, and loneliness lingered. Elise stood just inside the hallway, clipboard forgotten in her hand. The hallway stretched ahead like a tunnel, metal cages lining both sides, each one holding stories that no one wanted to hear. Some dogs barked with desperation, others howled, some just stared. But Kennel 42 at the very end remained silent. Always silent. She exhaled slowly, adjusting the sleeves of her oversized hoodie. It had belonged to her brother before the accident. The faded letters on the chest still smelled like home, like campfires and fur. Her fingers trembled slightly as she stepped forward, the sound of her shoes muted by the thick air of sadness. She paused at Kennel 42. The shepherd was still there, curled into the same corner, as still as stone. But this time something was different. A single ray of the setting sun cut through a crack in the ceiling vent and landed barely on a rusted metal collar resting beside him. Just enough light to catch the worn engraving, Max. Elisa's breath caught. She hadn't seen that before. It gleamed like a breadcrumb in a forgotten trail, and for a moment, the cold around her chest loosened its grip. Max? She whispered, not to call him, but to remember him, as if the name itself was a key. From the corner, one ear lifted. Not fully, just slightly, but enough. Elise felt something then, not certainty but possibility. A subtle shift in the air, like winter turning towards spring. She didn't know what it meant yet, but hope, however faint, had entered the building. And it had teeth. Elise Morgan didn't believe in fate. Not anymore. At 29, she carried too many memories in her eyes and not enough in her arms. The sudden loss of her younger brother, Luke, 2 years ago had cracked something in her that never quite sealed. He'd been her best friend, the one who always brought strays home, the one who believed every creature deserved a second chance, even when the world didn't. Now, Elise wandered through life like a passenger on her own train, showing up at work, saying all the right things, smiling just enough. But inside, she felt unfinished, unmoored. Volunteering at the shelter wasn't part of some grand healing plan. She just walked past it one day and stopped. Something, maybe instinct, maybe grief, had pulled her inside. She never expected to stay more than a day. Then she saw the dog in Kennel 42. The German Shepherd was unlike the others. He didn't bark, didn't beg, just lay curled into the back corner like a ghost in his own story. Shelter staff said he had been found near an abandoned cabin, half-starved, covered in old scars. No microchip, no tags, no past, just trauma. They called him Shadow, but Elise felt that wasn't right. He was more than his fear, more than silence. She started sitting with him during her shifts. Never spoke, never reached, just let him know someone was there. Each day she noticed more. The way his eyes followed her even when he didn't move. The slight twitch of his ears when she whispered stories under her breath. The strange way he flinched not at loud noises but sudden silence. He was watching, waiting, holding something behind those amber eyes. Secrets she couldn't name. Memories, maybe. Pain. But also, something else. Loyalty. Not given. Buried. She wondered who had hurt him, and more importantly, who had loved him enough for him to still be alive. One rainy Thursday, as she knelt outside his kennel again, she noticed something. His paw. It had inched forward. Just a few inches. Toward her. She didn't move. Didn't even breathe. And for the first time, Elise felt it. The tiniest thread pulling between them. Fragile, invisible, but real. He wasn't gone. Not fully. Not yet. And as his gaze met hers, she had one single, breathtaking thought. What if he wasn't meant to be rescued? What if he was meant to return? Elise's connection with the dog Max, as she now called him, grew in small, almost imperceptible steps. Each day he edged closer to the gate. She kept her distance, speaking only in whispers, never reaching toward him. When she offered treats, he didn't take them, but he sniffed the air. When she read books aloud during her volunteer shifts, his eyes would open. She noticed other things, too. The way he flinched when anyone wore dark boots. The way he trembled during thunderstorms but growled low when the shelter's phone rang. Only the ringing, nothing else. Max was afraid, but it wasn't just fear. It was trained fear. One evening, Elise stayed late, just 10 minutes after closing, finishing up paperwork. The halls were empty, shadows stretching across the floor like fingers. She passed Max's kennel to say goodnight, and he wasn't there. The corner was empty. Her heart stopped. Her feet moved before her mind could catch up. "Max?" she whispered, peering inside. Then a sound, metal scraping. The kennel door was slightly ajar. Her breath caught in her throat. Panic flooded her chest. She ran down the hallway, calling his name in a whisper, careful not to scare the others into barking. Nothing. No sound. No fur. No paw prints. Until she reached the back exit. It was wide open. The cold night wind rushed in through the door, carrying wet leaves and something else. A faint whimper. Far away. Max was gone. The next 48 hours were a blur of fear and guilt. Elise barely slept. She scoured the woods behind the shelter with a flashlight, whispering his name until her voice cracked. She posted flyers, called nearby shelters, and emailed rescues. But something gnawed at her gut. That door, it hadn't been left open earlier. It had been locked. On the third morning, she returned to the shelter before dawn. Something made her walk the perimeter one more time. A shimmer on the chain-link fence caught her eye. Just a few strands of thick black fur. Too coarse for a cat. Too high up for a natural escape. Someone had taken him. Her stomach turned cold. Later that day, Elise sat in the staff lounge, her fingers clutching a coffee cup she couldn't bring herself to sip. One of the older volunteers, Marla, sat down beside her. "You're still thinking about the shepherd," she said softly. Elise nodded. Marla glanced around, then leaned in. "You know, there's a place, a private kennel not far from where he was found. People say dogs go in but don't always come out." Elise stared at her. "Are you saying what kind of place?" Marla shrugged. No one really knows. They're off-grid. Breed security dogs, or say they do. Rumors, mostly. Bad ones. That night, Elise found herself searching old forums, rescue networks, even missing dog reports. Her laptop buzzed late into the night. But around 2 a.m., something surfaced. A blurry image posted to a private dog rescue group, captioned, "Is this anyone's lost GSD?" Seen tied near an old barn off Hollow Creek Road. Her heart flipped. The eyes. That was Max. Elise didn't call the shelter. She didn't call the police. She just drove. Hollow Creek was 40 minutes out, the roads narrowing into gravel paths as the sun broke over the treetops. Mist clung to the fields like wool, and an eerie silence hung in the air. When she reached the barn, she parked behind a thicket and approached on foot. It was larger than expected, half collapsed, but someone had reinforced parts of it with fresh wood and fencing. She moved quietly, staying low, and then she saw him, Max, chained near the far wall, his coat matted, his body thinner, but his head turned, eyes locking with hers in an instant of stunned silence. "Elise," she mouthed, fighting tears. A noise behind her made her freeze. Footsteps, heavy, purposeful. She ducked behind an overturned trough as a man emerged from the barn, walking toward Max. He wore black boots. Max shrank instantly, flattening himself to the ground. The man muttered something and raised a hand. Elise felt fury rise in her chest like fire. She waited until he turned back, then crawled toward the rear fence. Bolt cutters. She didn't even remember packing them, but there they were in her bag, shaking in her hands as she cut through the old chain link. She hissed his name. "Max, come." He didn't move. The man was inside now, his back turned. "Elise," she whispered again. "Please." Max's ears twitched. A step, then another. She reached her hand through the fence, slow and open, and he ran, straight into her arms. They drove in silence, Elise barely breathing until the barn disappeared behind the trees. Max sat in the back seat, curled like a wolf trying to make himself small. She called the rescue group who posted the photo. They had no idea who the man was, just that someone had driven off as they approached, leaving Max behind. But Elise knew. Max hadn't escaped. He'd been discarded. Again. Back at the shelter, Max was checked by the vet. Dehydrated, weak, but no broken bones. As Elise sat beside his crate that night, he placed his paw on her shoe. No flinch, no fear, just quiet trust. And she knew then, this wasn't over. Someone had trained him, hurt him, broken him to obey. But something in him had survived it. A memory, maybe, or something deeper. And as Max finally rested his head on her lap, Elise realized what it was. He remembered love, and now he'd found it again. But something still lingered in her mind. An unanswered question. Why had he been taken in the first place? And who else was out there, training dogs not for love, but for fear? Elise didn't have answers yet, but she had Max, and a spark of determination that hadn't existed in her for years. Because what started as a rescue was turning into something much bigger. Something that would test everything she thought she knew. And in the reflection of Max's tired, loyal eyes, she saw a shadow, and it wasn't human. Elise knew that Max's rescue was just the beginning. The look in his eyes, anxious yet alert, told her more than words ever could. He had seen things, remembered things, and though he couldn't speak, his body flinched and his gaze darted whenever certain sounds echoed through the shelter. The slap of boots, the jangle of a chain, the low buzz of an electric gate. She began documenting it all in a worn leather notebook. Times, reactions, places. She spoke to him as she wrote, as if he could correct her. Tuesday, 3:12 p.m. Man in dark hoodie walked past his kennel. Max barked low, not aggressive. Tail low, watching, like he recognized something. It was more than instinct. It was memory. She took him home after 3 weeks. The shelter manager agreed it was best. His progress was clear with her. At the shelter, he barely ate. At her cottage, nestled on the edge of a forest road, he rested. He followed her from room to room, never too close, but always there. And once, when she dropped a mug in the kitchen, he barked sharply, then whined, and placed himself between her and the broken porcelain. A protector's move. But he wasn't just protecting her. He was warning her. That weekend, they hiked the Eastern Trail behind her property. Just her and Max, winding through the pines. The quiet soothed him. Birds chirped overhead. Leaves crunched beneath their feet. Elise kept a long lead on him, but he didn't pull. Then he stopped. Ears up, nose to the wind. "What is it?" she asked softly. He stepped forward. They're barely visible in the undergrowth, paw prints. Deep ones. Not his. And beside them, boot prints. She crouched. "Max? Do you smell something?" He moved forward slowly, sniffing, tense. Then, in the distance, a faint bark. Distant. Familiar. Her heart leapt. She knew that bark. Max did too. He bolted toward it. "Elise, wait!" she cried. The trail split ahead. A crumbled path descending toward an old quarry. She followed Max down carefully, heart pounding. The wind shifted. The bark came again, closer now, echoing. But this time, different. Pained, like a cry. They reached a clearing near the quarry's edge. There, tied to a rusting fence, was another German shepherd. Ribs visible, muzzle scarred. Max whimpered low. Elise knelt. "Easy, I've got you." She cut the rope. The dog flinched, but didn't run. He staggered into her arms. A tag, barely readable. "Tango," she called animal control from the car. They picked him up quickly, promising care. But that wasn't what unsettled Elise. It was what she saw tangled in the leash. A scrap of fabric. Black, waterproof, just like the jacket the man at the barn wore. Someone had left him there on purpose. Later that night, Elise sat on her porch, Max curled beside her. She opened her notebook again. "Max," she said quietly. "Tango didn't just get lost. He was left." He looked up, eyes reflecting the soft porch light. "And the prints?" They led toward the creek trail, not away from it. She traced her finger over the sketch she'd drawn. Boot prints beside paw prints, diverging halfway, like someone veered off intentionally. Then her phone buzzed. It was a voicemail. From Marla. "Elise, you need to see this. A friend of mine in rescue sent me a photo. It's another shepherd. Looks like Max, same eyes. Same posture. Found on the edge of Old Mill Road. Elise, that's the third one in 2 weeks." Her breath hitched. 3 dogs. Same breed. Same signs of trauma. It wasn't random. It was a pattern. The next morning, Elise drove to the address Marla gave her. A small private foster home, run by a retired vet named Joan. The moment she stepped into the yard, Max tensed. She looked down. His hackles were raised. Inside, the foster shepherd, named Rocky, lay in a bed by the fire. He lifted his head. Eyes widened. Max froze, then whimpered. Rocky barked once, then again. Low, rhythmic, like a code. And Max answered. Joan blinked. They know each other? Elise knelt beside Max, or... They were trained together. Joan's face fell. They both have identical notches cut into their ears, she said, lifting Rocky's gently. Elise checked Max's right ear. Same mark. Faint, but there. I thought it was an old injury, Joan said. But it's too clean. Surgical. Like a tag. Elise's pulse quickened. You think they were marked? Joan nodded. For identification, breeding programs, or worse, fight training. On the drive home, Elise couldn't shake the chill crawling up her spine. Misdirection. Relief. Then the truth surged back. Someone was collecting shepherds, marking them, discarding the ones that disobeyed. And Max? He hadn't just escaped. He'd survived. She pulled over near the trailhead where she and Max had first found Tango. Stepping out, she stared at the forest line, her thoughts racing. What if Max wasn't the only one watching her house? What if they knew where he was now? A branch snapped behind her. Max growled low. She turned, but no one was there. That night, As thunder rolled in the distance, Max curled at the foot of her bed. Elise stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. She thought of the barks, the prints, the markings, but more than that, she thought of his eyes. Still scared, still haunted. And how, even now, they followed her from across the room, waiting, trusting. She reached down, hand resting gently on his back. "We'll figure this out," she whispered. Max exhaled deeply. The storm outside raged louder. But inside, for the first time in weeks, Max didn't flinch. He was home. But the shadows? They hadn't left. Not yet. It began with a flicker. Elise had just stepped out to grab firewood from the back shed when she saw it. The motion light on the far side of the house blinked once, then again. Max, who had been lying by the door, snapped upright, his ears sharp and body rigid. She paused, clutching the crate of logs tighter. "Max, what is it?" He let out a low growl, not aggressive but warning. That's when she heard it. The crunch of boots. Not hers. Someone was moving along the outer fence line. She dropped the crate. Max lunged toward the door, barking now, deep, commanding. He knew. This wasn't random wildlife or wind. This was something else. Elise grabbed the flashlight from the wall and crept toward the edge of the porch. Rain misted down from a sky swollen with clouds. The light blinked again, casting long shadows into the brush. Then came the voice. "Easy, Max. Easy boy." Her blood froze. Whoever it was knew his name. That voice. Deep, calm, practiced. Max barked again, but this time he didn't charge. He stood protectively between Elise and the steps, hackles up. "Elise Carter," the voice said. "We're not here to hurt anyone. Just give the dog back, and this ends." She stepped forward, flashlight shaking slightly in her grip. "He's not going anywhere." Silence, then laughter. Two men stepped from the trees. Both wore dark, waterproof gear. One carried a long black leash looped around his wrist. The other had something worse, a tranquilizer gun. "We trained him ourselves," the first man said, his eyes never leaving Max. "He remembers the rules." "Not anymore," Elise replied, her voice steely. "He remembers what you did." The man raised the tranquilizer gun. "You don't want to do this, lady." But in that moment, Max made the choice for them all. He lunged. Fast. Ferocious. Unafraid. The first man tried to catch him with the leash, but Max twisted midair, slamming into his chest and sending him backward into the mud. The tranq gun clattered to the ground. Elise darted forward, grabbing it. The second man reached into his coat, but froze when he saw the barrel aimed straight at him. "Get down!" Elise snapped. He hesitated, then ran. Max stood over the first man, teeth bared but not biting, just holding, guarding. Elise called 911, breath trembling. "Two men. One's down. They came to take my dog." Police arrived within minutes. The man Max had taken down was identified as Dean Whitmore, a known handler in an underground dog ring that specialized in training shepherds for illegal security work and discarding the ones who resisted. Max, Tango, Rocky. They had all been part of it. Elise gave them everything, her notes, the tags, the photos. The police began rounding up the rest of the operation within days. And Max? He stayed beside her through it all. No more flinching, no more cowering. He had faced the nightmare and won. Weeks later, Elise stood in front of a small, fenced field behind her home, watching 6 German shepherds run freely through the tall grass. Tango had gained weight. Rocky had found his bark. 2 new rescues, Zara and Flint, were learning what a ball was for the first time. And Max? He sprinted down the hill, tongue lolling, tail wagging like it had never stopped. He bounded up to her and dropped a slobbery tennis ball at her feet. She laughed. "Still your favorite, huh?" He barked once, then plopped down, head on her boots. A car pulled up near the gate. Marla stepped out, carrying a clipboard and grinning. "That's the last adoption paper signed. Zara's going to a family with 2 kids and a huge backyard." Elise smiled. "Perfect. You sure you don't want to keep all of them?" Elise chuckled. "Tempting, but I think Max would like to be the spoiled one for a while." Max nudged her leg, as if in agreement. Marla looked out at the open field. You really saved them, you know? Elise shook her head. He did. She looked down at Max. His eyes, once haunted, were clear now. Brave, steady, and hers glistened with quiet pride. I think, she said softly, he was just waiting for someone who saw him as more than broken. That night, as the sun dipped behind the pines, casting golden light across the cottage, Elise lit a single lantern on the porch. Max lay beside her, watching fireflies dance through the dusk. There was no fear in his body anymore. No tension, just peace. She scratched behind his ear. You're home now. He licked her hand, tail thumping lightly. And when the wind picked up, rustling the trees, Max didn't even flinch. He just closed his eyes and slept. The stars shimmered above the pine trees, and a gentle breeze rolled across the field, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and earth. Elise sat quietly on the porch swing, a blanket draped over her knees. Her eyes followed Max as he lay stretched out in the grass, his ears perked, eyes soft, chest rising in the rhythm of peace. There had been a time, not long ago, when neither of them believed this kind of calm could exist. But now it did. And it wasn't just the stillness of the evening that made her smile. It was the journey behind them, the healing that had taken root in their silence, in their play, in their shared strength. Max had taught her how to trust again, not just in others, but in herself, in the quiet power of showing up for someone every single day until fear gave way to comfort, until a cornered soul learned how to run free again. And Elise, she'd given him what no one else ever had: patience without pressure, love without expectations. Now, when Max looked at her, there was no wariness, only recognition, only loyalty, the kind built on something deeper than training. It was the bond of survival, of second chances taken and never let go. She reached down as he trotted back to her side, his fur warm beneath her hand. He leaned into her touch, content. This wasn't the ending of a rescue story. It was the beginning of a life lived out loud. Together, she no longer saw a broken dog, and she no longer felt like a broken person. They were both simply whole. He looked up at her, eyes gleaming. She whispered, "We made it, Max." And in that moment, under the stars, with the wind in their hair and nothing chasing them but time, it was all enough. They had found each other, and that was everything. As Max curled beside Elise, safe at last, their story became more than just a rescue. It became a reminder of how love, patience, and a second chance can change everything. Now, imagine yourself in her shoes. Would you have followed his muddy paw prints into the woods? Would you have waited, heart pounding, in the rain for a bark you weren't sure would come? Let us know in the comments. What would you have done if you were Elise? These stories aren't just tales. They're windows into the quiet bravery so many people and dogs show every single day. If Max and Elise's journey touched your heart, even just a little, hit that like button. It helps more kind-hearted people find stories like this. And if you believe in the power of second chances, in healing, in the simple, powerful bond between a human and their dog, then don't just stop here. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story that moves you. We've got more real-feeling, soul-hugging adventures waiting, stories that'll make you cry, smile, and believe in hope again. And hey, share this video with a friend who needs to believe in goodness today. You never know who's looking for a sign that brighter days are still ahead. Because sometimes, the right person finds the right dog. And when they do, everything changes.